and we're up and running, and it is a lovely, lovely day in the Midwest. And, you know, Barrett, one of the things that's going on outside right now is it's cottonwood season. And so there are these magical little fluffy things that are floating around and kind of a dizzy, magical sort of pattern making. And that, you know, always causes me to contemplate Avatar, the movie, and
Yeah.
a very similar little critters falling from the trees. So it's a magical time in Chicago as cottonwood is spreading its seed throughout the world.
Yeah, it does have this sort of mystical and fun feeling, but somehow as you were saying that, I just had this imagine flash in my mind, like, what if we were all these little things that floated through the air and bumped into each other? All of a sudden then we'd have grievances from one little one little cotton floaty thing to the other. Hey, get out of my way. I was trying to float there.
Yeah, that's the dark side of the human experience, but I think we are all kind of like those things, because if you sit there and watch them moving around, it's a good expose of how, even though the wind may be moving east to west, a gentle breeze has got all these swirling pockets. And when you're seeing the cottonwood little fluffies, they dance a dizzy dance. Their dance is quite insane. You know, they're going ziggity zaggity all over the place. And really, then we look at the world around us, and it's like, wow, this is kind of creepy how obvious it is that the universe we have created here is kind of the Mad Hatter's Tea Party.
It is true. It is true. We are all like that Mad Hatter. You know, we're trying to put a good face on and still have our tea, but we just really don't know what's going on. But we're going to pretend like we do.
That is true. And Mr. Johnny Depp, really, he was the guy who really made that role very visceral. I mean, the makeup was great, and of course his insanity came through magnificently. So we were able to get a true glimpse into the mind of Lewis Carroll when he was writing that.
Yeah, and I think all of these, you know, these stories that sort of last for generations, the reason they stick around is because they have a deep message. You know, we look at the story of Alice going down the rabbit hole. It seems like she's going into an alternate universe, you know, and she's having all these crazy experiences that don't make sense. They're really absurd, the things that are happening to her, and seemingly impossible. But what is that but a beautiful metaphor for what we've all done by believing this world to be our home? We've somehow made these impossible ideas like death and suffering seem normal and everyday. We've confined ourselves into this mortal and time-bound body that seems to be, you know, just how things are. And what are we doing by trying to return back home like Alice is, but trying to let go of these crazy stories that don't make sense, and to look beyond the kind of illusion of what's showing up around us, so that we can reawaken and return back to where we've always been.
Absolutely. And you know, we're not going to make it back to where we're supposed to be unless all of us go back as a collective. And that's really fluid segue into what we're looking at for our dialogue this week. We're looking at the Song of Prayer and the section on praying for others. So the only way any of us are going to get back is if we're praying and supporting and affirming the truth of everyone around us. So this is a perfect section of the course, or the addendum to the course, to kind of roll forward with here on this beautiful Thursday morning.
Yeah, yeah. This idea of praying, you know, the last section we were talking about had the couple paragraphs about praying for one's enemies and about how if we believe that anyone is our enemy, that we need prayer indeed. And so now we're just sort of moving on to the next part of this, where we talk about actual praying for others. He says, we said that prayer is always for yourself, and this is so. Why then should you pray for others at all? And if you should, how should you do it? Praying for others, if rightly understood, becomes a mean for lifting your projections of guilt from your brother and enabling you to recognize it is not he who is hurting you. So this last sentence right here, this is key. This is like the heart of the course. A lot of times we find sentences that sort of distill the whole, you know, 1,000+ pages of the course down into like a single sentence. And this is it. Praying for others, if rightly understood, becomes a mean for lifting your projections of guilt from your brother. So we're always projecting our own guilt out onto the world around us, onto the people in our lives, onto the situations that we live through. And then he says, and enabling you to recognize it is not he who is hurting you. Well, it always seems like it's them, right? It always seems like if they would change, if they would say the right words, if they would blah, 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 then all of a sudden I could be peaceful. You know, I could be happy. And that's the ego, you know, hook, line, and sinker. So I'm just going to finish the rest of this paragraph because it's so beautiful. It says, the poisonous thought that he is your enemy, your evil counterpart, your nemesis, must be relinquished before you can be saved from guilt. For this, the means is prayer, of rising power and with ascending goals until it reaches even up to God. So we're really just letting go of all of these stories we have about anyone else. And one of the things that's even amazing about this is ultimately this brother, this other, is even the body that we think we are. You know, we identify so closely with this body, but when all of a sudden there's something wrong with the body, there's an ache, there's a pain, there's an injury, there's an illness, you know, the body doesn't seem like our friend anymore. And really what we're doing is we're just projecting this guilt, as Jesus is talking about here. We're projecting that guilt onto our shoulder, onto our back, onto whatever it is going on with us. And we ultimately need to forgive and remove that projection as well to come back into the truth of what we are, which is always, always in the mind.
Absolutely. And as we were kind of rambling along there, I was thinking of a certain 115-pound German Shepherd that frequently interrupts our discussions with his barking. And, you know, you have to extend that praying for others to go beyond just what we're identifying as the human equation in this realm, because everything that exhibits life, you know, that bug that you squashed on your driveway this morning, everything around us is a part of that greater consciousness that is us. So we are united in life, and we have to get beyond these ideas of exclusion and realize that it's not just people showing up that we need to pray for, but the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, all the different ways that life is seeking to manifest itself and to reflect itself to us is something that is a part of this greater process, wherein we can be healed by seeking to heal everyone and everything around us. So it just gets deeper and deeper, and actually more and more exciting as we continue to explore these ideas around the idea of prayer. So going on to the next paragraph here, it says, the earlier forms of prayer at the bottom of the ladder will not be free from envy and malice. They call for vengeance, not for love. And boy, you know, you can go almost anywhere on the internet and find somebody praying that this group over here will be cursed by God, and The Old Testament is especially rife with stories about uh, praying that God will bring vengeance down on your enemies and that sort of thing. And that was what separated the Old Testament from the New Testament, the fact that Jesus showed up and said, no, 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 you're not supposed to be praying to God for him to smite your enemies. You're praying to the wrong God. So it's very, very clear that this whole process of prayer has to be taken quite seriously. Says they, nor do they come from one who understands that they are calls for death, made out of fear by those who cherish guilt. They call upon a vengeful God, and it is he who seems to answer them. Hell cannot be asked for another, and then escaped by him who asks for it. So if you're praying that God will strike down Donald Trump, well, you're probably going to get the old shillelagh yourself in the process. And we have to be very clear about that. Only those who are in hell can ask for hell. Those who have been forgiven and who accepted their forgiveness could never make a prayer like that. So that is so beautiful because it is, again, so inclusive. The whole point of what we're trying to do here is to escape dualism and to arrive at a place where we're existing in a non-dualistic state of consciousness. And that basically means removing all the barriers within our mind about, the presence of self, because there is only one self. And once we figure that out, then we're starting to make some significant progress.
It's true, and as any of us start to work with these ideas, we start to realize there are quite a number of barriers within our mind. We might think we need the whole Army Corps of Engineers just to help us remove them. But the good news is we have something even better than the Army Corps of Engineers, which is Holy Spirit, which is Jesus. When we ask them for help, their power is infinite, and there's nothing that they can't help us let go of. The only reason that seems to take time is because we are so attached to the ego. We're so attached to this idea of finding someone else to blame, or sometimes blaming ourselves. As long as there's someone to blame, the ego is happy. The ego is well fed. And what we want to start doing is we want to stop feeding the ego.
Yes, and the ego, it not only is ravenous, but it has no sense of discernment. It has no ability to filter. So, you're trundling along thinking, oh, well, everybody else around me is getting smitten and I'm doing pretty good. And that's usually when the bolt of lightning occurs. So we have to be very lucid about this, that once again, any sense of duality is your Achilles heel.
Yeah. And if there's any sort of sense of superiority, as you're just mentioning, Chris, that's a sign of differences. And differences are not of heaven. Differences are not of truth. Differences are only of the ego. So whenever we have something that we're comparing in our life, we're comparing ourselves to someone else, or we're comparing two other things, that always is a sign that the ego is involved in some way. And especially if that comparison has any amount of judgment in it, which is almost always there. So we want to just be really aware. We want to start to sort of tune in to what we're doing as we're going through our life, so that we can start to switch out of that. And I think this next paragraph helps us to do that. Jesus says, at these levels then, the learning goal must be to recognize that prayer will bring an answer only in the form in which the prayer was made. This is enough. From here, it will be an easy step to the next levels. The next ascent begins with this: what I have asked for my brother is not what I would have. Thus have I made of him my enemy. So what Jesus is saying here is we just need to catch ourselves. You could say we almost have this automatic habit of finding enemies, of finding someone who's done something wrong, who's wronged us, who deserves to either, have some bad traffic, descend upon them, or suffer in the fiery pits of hell. I mean, we have different levels of anger that we find ourselves in. But whenever we want something like that for anyone, we're actually wanting that for ourselves. And that's where we start to realize, maybe I shouldn't be so vicious towards this person, because this is coming back to me. I don't want that. I don't want that for myself. And we start to have a little bit more discernment, and then we start to catch ourselves. And he says here, once we do that, it is apparent that this step cannot be reached by anyone who sees no value or advantage to himself in setting others free. So again, when we free our brother, we're freeing ourselves. This may be long delayed because it may seem to be dangerous instead of merciful. To the guilty, there seems indeed to be a real advantage in having enemies. And this imagined gain must go if enemies are to be set free. So once we see what's going on, once we really look at this dynamic, we say, okay, if there's only one of us, and if I'm deeply angry and hurt towards someone else, what am I doing when I'm sending anger out? I'm actually sending it right to myself. Whenever I think that they're wrong, they're bad, they're sinful, I'm actually thinking I'm bad, I'm wrong, I'm sinful. And the truth is, you're not. None of us are. We are not bad or sinful. That is just a false idea. And so again, this is where we start to pluck the log from our own eyes, so that we can start to see more clearly.
Yes, that's very true. And I see a lot of babble on Facebook and Twitter, all the different forms of social media about that magic word, karma, that everybody loves so much. And this pretty much shoots a hole right through the center of the idea of karma. If you're an advocate of karma, if you're wanting, the universe to get even with somebody, then you're missing the point, because as you have said, there is no somebody out there. There is only you out there. And so those shots fired across the bow of the ship, it could very well be your ship that starts to take on water from that. So we do have to be mindful. And the beauty of the Holy Spirit is, if you sincerely ask the Holy Spirit to monitor you, you will, in mid-sentence, notice that the Holy Spirit is going to intervene when you are starting to have those negative thoughts. So it's a very simple process. It's not like something that is arduous, something that you have to take upon the whole world yourself, because the Holy Spirit is listening to everything. It is the heartbeat within you. And if you do that invocation and ask that process to be set into motion, you'll be able to catch yourself very, very easily, because the Holy Spirit will shoot off fireworks every time you shoot off your mouth.
Yeah. And it does get to be pretty strong at times, as we keep asking for help. In the beginning, it's often gentle, very quiet nudges, we start to kind of go off the rails, and we get a little feeling like, oh, maybe there's a loving perspective here. Maybe there's something I can share of truth rather than a pain. And but those quiet nudges start to get stronger and louder as we keep listening to them. As we say to Jesus, excuse me, I want your help. His help becomes more evident. It's not that it was ever not there, or that it wasn't ever offered to us. It's always been offered to us. But we get better at hearing it. It's sort of like we're tuning our ears, our inner ear, to that message, and we can say, oh right, that yearning for love, that desire for compassion, has never been absent. It's here right now. So why don't we say yes to it? And it becomes a whole new way of life for us.
It does. And, it advances us forward so we're not loading up on unconscious guilt because, that's one of the side effects of the split mind, which we are all suffering from, is we have tons and tons and tons of things lodged in that darkened region that we don't want to look at. And going forward here, it says guilt must be given up and not concealed, nor can this be done without some pain. And a glimpse of the merciful nature of this step may, for some time, be followed by a deep retreat into fear. So, the early stages of correcting the way your mind operates is going to have some tenacious moments in it. For fear's defenses are fearful in themselves, and when they are recognized, they bring their fear with them. And I think that probably is that idea of legion, when Jesus was confronting a man who was possessed with evil spirits, and he's asked, who is there? And the voice says, "We are legion." And that's the way fear works. It multiplies, it manifests over and over and over again. But it's all the same core fear. Yet what advantage has an illusion of escape ever brought a prisoner? His real escape from guilt can lie only in the recognition that the guilt has gone. So we have to get to a point where we can realize that it was never there actually to begin with. And how can this be recognized as long as he hides it in another and does not see it as his own? So there's a classic example of projection. Fear of escape makes it difficult to welcome freedom, and to make a jailer of an enemy seems to be safety. How then can he be released without an insane fear for yourself? You have made him your salvation and your escape from guilt. Your investment in this escape is heavy, and your fear of letting go is strong. So being a political person or a religious person, or actually pretty much just about any person in this material realm, you're going to find somebody that did you wrong. And until you can address that, you're going to punish yourself over and over and over again.
Yeah, and the good news is that we can let ourselves off the hook. Jesus has already let us off the hook. God holds no grievances. It's only us who are holding on to this thought system of fear and condemnation. And, this is the holy instant right here where we see what has been happening. We see that we have been holding tight to this pain and this suffering, and we say, no, I'm done doing this. And the process may seem to play out time and time again, but that choice is the choice of healing. It is the choice of love, and it's the choice that all of us can make in this and in every instant. And I think that's really what our work is to recognize that that's what we're here for, and to do our best at making that choice over and over until we complete that work.
That is absolutely a fact. And we still have 2 more paragraphs here, which we'll save for next week. I do want to mention that Barrett and I are going to be down in Alsip at Transformation on Sunday. It would be very cool if you could join us there. And I'm sure we'll have some wonderful things to share about life's journey, because it's what the course is all about. It's about examining your life's journey and maybe fixing some of those flat tires along the way.
That's right. We have the holy pit crew coming to help our cars.
Yes, and they will gas you up and get you back on the road.
I just hear the noise of a rivet gun.
Yes, that and the smell of fumes.
All right. Well, this has been really great talking to you, Chris. I'm looking forward to seeing you on Sunday, and then we'll be back here online next week, Thursday.
Yes, so do join us and subscribe that would be really lovely. That way you'll know when we're doing things. To my YouTube channel, and just continue to look at everybody around you and say, that's me, that's me, that's me. That will help you. That will get you through the day.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Talk to you soon.
All right, sounds good. Bye, man.